like, look, I think it'd be really cool to tell a prequel story about how Atlanta fell, do Black Hawk Down, but with zombies, and have a few of the main characters pass through.
Hey, Walking Dead fans, this is going to be a little story on the fall of Atlanta, a little bit about that. Once upon a time, there was this guy, his name was Frank Darabont. He was this filmmaker out in Hollywood, and he was at a comic book shop, and he found this comic book, The Walking Dead. He's like, oh man, that'd make a great TV show. And Frank had just done some movies. He'd done Shawshank Redemption, he'd done Green Mile, and he'd done a movie called The Mist. And it starred a guy, Thomas Jane, and he wanted Thomas Jane. He thought, man, that'd be a good guy to play Rick in this show. But of course, Andrew Lincoln won the part. But some other actors he did bring from that movie was Laurie Holden, who plays Andrea in the show, Jeffrey DeMunn, who plays Dell, and Melissa McBride, who plays Carol. They were all in The Mist. But one other person ended up in the first season that was in The Mist that Frank purposely brought into the show. And his name is Sam Witwer. And he was the zombie, the walker, in the tank. When Rick climbed up into the tank, there was a walker in there. It kind of came to, and Rick shot it in the head, and he went deaf for a little bit. There's a story behind that walker, actually.
And your character will go through, and you're a soldier, and the chain of command breaks down, and eventually you have to take out your superior officer to save a bunch of people, and then you get bit.
Frank Darabont had planned out season 2, but he was fired by AMC. He's now in a court battle suing them for a bunch of money, but that's stuff for other videos. And some of this is old news. A lot of you guys probably have heard it in the past because this news really came out around 2012. But once Darabont was booted from the show, a lot of his ideas went with him. So one of the things he had planned was to take the walker that was in the tank from season 1, and the first episode of season 2 would have shown us the fall of Atlanta. It would have followed that soldier through the streets of Atlanta on a mission up until the point of Rick getting into the tank. Frank was definitely aiming toward a movie-esque type feel, and it took a little bit bigger budget to create that. But after the fact, the actor who played the walker in the tank did an interview. I'll show you some of that, of what he said. And then this website, ain'titcool.com, Frank Darabont sent them a letter, and I'll read that through, and it tells the exact story that he had planned out. So what Frank has said is that it wasn't a web series or anything. It was actually going to be the first episode of season 2. And then where we see the first episode of season 2 right now, that would have been his second episode. So this is a little drawn out, but it's very interesting. So this is what Frank said. The idea was to do this very focused, you are there documentary feel. Not going all shaky cam, but still making it a bit rawer and grainier than the rest of the show. We'd like to start with a squad of maybe 7 or 8 soldiers being dropped into the city by chopper. They have map coordinates they need to get to. They've been told to report to a certain place to provide reinforcement. It's not a special mission. It's basically a housekeeping measure, putting more boots on the ground to reinforce key intersections and installations throughout the city. And then we follow this group from the moment the copter sets them down, and all they have to do is travel maybe a dozen blocks. A simple journey. But what starts as a no-brainer scenario goes from the city is being secured to holy shit, we've lost control, the world is ending. I wanted to do a really intense character-driven ensemble story as communications break down, supply lines are lost, escape routes are cut off, morale falls apart, leadership unravels, mutinies heat up, etc. And I did that video on what caused the military to fail, and Frank Darabont kind of answered it as far as through the Walking Dead eyes right there. As he said, communications broke down, then supply lines were lost, escape routes were cut off, the morale fell apart, the leadership unraveled, and mutinies happened. Along the way, I thought we could briefly dovetail this story with a few established characters from the show. Not to overdo that, mind you, because it could get silly and too coincidental if you load too much into that idea. But I thought it would be great to veer off on a quick narrative detour that brushes our soldiers briefly up against some people we know. Picture our squad arriving at a manned barricade where some civilians are being held back from leaving the city on a shoot-to-kill orders to stop the spread of the contagion. It's a panicked, high-intensity scene, and in this crowd of desperate people, we find Andrea and Amy. The barricade gunners panic. The civilians start to get mowed down by machine gun fire, and in this melee, the girls get pulled to safety by some old guy they don't even know. It's Dale. He's nobody to them, just some guy who saw the opportunity to do the right thing and reacted in the moment. This would have been perhaps a minute or two of the episode, just a cool detour like the various outposts the soldiers encounter in Saving Private Ryan. But we would have witnessed the moment that Dale meets Andrea and Amy, seeing where that relationship began. I also felt it would be a great way to get Emma Bell back into the series for a moment because she was so wonderful, and we were all so sorry that her character died and she had to leave the show. So the story follows these soldiers through hell as the city falls apart and the squad implodes, with Sound Soldier being the main character and the morale center of the group. He becomes the last survivor of the squad, and he finally gets to the map coordinates they've been trying to get to from the start. It's the barricade at the Atlanta courthouse intersection from the pilot where Rick later finds the tank. The soldier is still alive when he gets there, but he's been bitten. He's accomplished his simple mission, but he's gone through 7 kinds of hell to do it, including being forced to frag his squad leader to save some people, and now he's dying. He crawls off into the tank just to get off the street and under cover. As his fever builds, the poor guy starts to hallucinate. He pulls his last grenade and considers ending his life. He sets the grenade down on that shelf for a moment to reflect on all the shit and misery that brought him to this sad endpoint of his life, and to dredge up the courage to pull the pin. But before he can act, the fever burns him out, and he dies. Frank goes on to say the kicker comes in the last moments of the episode, after the soldier dies, and after a quiet lapse of time, there's a shot-for-shot reprise from the first episode of the first season. Rick comes scrambling into the tank, blows the zombie soldier's brain out. Now Rick's trapped, fade out, the end. The notion was to take the throwaway tank zombie Rick encountered in the pilot to tell that soldier's story, make him a star of his own movie, follow his journey, but don't reveal who he is until the end. The idea being that every zombie has a story. Every undead extra was once a human being with a life of his or her own, and was, in a sense, the star of his own life's movie. We followed this one particular guy and seen how his life ended. We witness his struggles, see his good intentions and his failures, and we experience his god-awful death in this tank. That's why I cast Sam as that tank zombie in the first place instead of just casting some extra. I had this story in mind while filming the pilot, and I knew I needed a superb actor to play that soldier when the time came. Frank said I always had in mind to throw in a wild card episode every season, maybe as a season opener or closer. Just a separate story, more in the feel of an anthology series, one that appears completely off the track of the regular series, but actually does wind up tying in somehow by the fade out. He said they did that sort of thing on Lost on occasion, and I really respected it. It always seemed like a bold choice that trusted the audience and rewarded their loyalty with a totally unexpected surprise episode every so often. But there it is, folks. There is the story from Frank Darabont himself of what he was going to do. Season 2, Episode 1. The story of the tank walker. The story of that soldier as Atlanta fell. During the fall of Atlanta. And it would tell some of the story about how and why maybe the military failed or Atlanta fell. But we never got that. It's definitely crazy to ponder how the show would have ended up if Frank stayed on board. The show has had its up and downs, and hopefully it's on and up right now with season 9.
I got all these cast members to do this. I got all my friends to pull in favors. I've gotten all these people to do things for nowhere near the money they're worth and nowhere near the money they get paid anywhere else.
Be sure to check out some of my other videos that are similar, Operation COBALT and others. The link's in the description below. I really like the tank story, and I think it would have been cool to see it. I think it would have been really cool, say Frank stayed at least another full season through season 2 before they fired him, just to see how season 2 played out as well under his direction.
And the reason I have to show up and do my best, no matter what budget AMC gives me, is because I owe it to everyone that's working for me.
But now you know, just in case you haven't heard it before, the story of the tank soldier. What would have been Season 2, Episode 1. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more dead stuff.